Alrighty. Hi, my name is Jax. I'll be playing Celeste any percent, and with me today is.
Pugroy.
So Celeste is a game about climbing a mountain. A lot of you have probably heard about it. Um, let's just jump right into it. 5, 4.
3, 2, 1.
Alrighty. So getting into it, Madeline, the main character, she has sort of 3 core abilities: jumping, climbing, and dashing. Um, and right now we're in prologue, and you don't actually get to dash here yet, but we will get that very shortly.
He's doing
This-
all these hops to save a couple frames on each jump just to make it a little quicker to get through there since you don't have the dash yet.
So a lot of this speedrun is about canceling the dash in various ways that preserve momentum. So right off the bat, we're going to see super dashes, hyper dashes, and
Wall
others.
bounces.
Yep. So a super dash is a horizontal dash into a jump, and then a hyper dash is very similar, but is a down diagonal dash, and that gives you a lower trajectory but more speed. These
And a wall bounce being doing that, but dashing upwards alongside a wall like that.
Yeah, so those 3 things give you a lot of mobility options, and then paired with things like corner boosts, the game changes from just jumping and dashing around to a lot of pretty quick inputs chained together to keep yourself moving.
The first level being relatively short. Not too many fancy tricks aside from just good movement.
Alrighty. So this game is mostly timed IGT, mostly entirely. So file time runs a little bit after chapter time does, but on the menus, nothing is running. And now we're in old site. So you'll see those dark gray rectangles. Those are called dream blocks, and in a second here they will be activated. And they extend your dash as long as the block is, basically. So here we do a little cutscene warp to put you inside that dream block, and then we're off. So in addition to hypers and such, if you downright dash with enough height, and usually out of a hyper, you can do what's called an ultra, and it preserves your speed longer and gives you a lot more jump height afterwards as well.
Now we're in the section where the evil part of Madeline, or Madeline, is going to be chasing us at about 3 seconds behind, following your same movements.
We did meet the incentive for that, by the way.
Oh, I apologize. Forgot about that. This is a variant. This was meant to play the game as other self. So the sprites look different, and actually inside dream blocks, it's even a little bit weirder, the animations. Forgot to turn that on in prologue.
Is now a good time for a quick donation?
Sure.
We have a $1 donation from Archibald that says, "Throw a baguette for new runner." Thank you so much for the donation.
So here are those ultras that we mentioned. We're going to see a lot of them.
No obstacles in that section, just a lot of movement.
Alrighty. Alrighty, headed into resort here. This chapter is substantially harder to learn than the previous 2. There's a lot of cycles, and there's a lot more things that can kill you.
Cycles being these red dust bunnies here that are gonna move back and forth, up and down, different patterns.
So a little thing about keys, movement in rooms with keys is really important because they spin on a cycle, and if you get them to the door fast enough, you get a faster cycle. I didn't quite make that one. But yeah, key cycles are the difference of like half a second, which at this point in this game's optimization is quite a bit. A lot of new strats posted are like, this saves a couple frames, maybe a tenth if you're lucky. If somebody finds a really big discovery, it's like saves like 0.4, wow. Yeah, this game is all about small micro optimizations.
Going into the huge mess part of Chapter 3, where you have pretty much 3 routes that you're going to take and go through to clean up this big lobby here that's full of a bunch of junk. The fastest route being the one that is in that big messy lobby part for the least amount of time.
Nice. That cycle skip is pretty tricky.
And at the end of each section, gonna hit this button here. It's gonna clean out all the chests now, so 2 sections left to go.
And you'll see this main hub room is already looking a little bit cleaner.
Cleaning up all the books.
And into this last section, there's a lot of tough tricks and cycles in this bit, so this section is particularly hard. And that's one.
There you go.
And this room is pretty tight as well.
Nice. And now it's all cleared out. Just gonna let him get the key here and then move on to the next checkpoint.
Alrighty.
Which is going to include a pretty precise trick in a few screens here.
Yeah, so the way that these, the round spikes or dust bunnies, their hitboxes have a 4-pixel cap vertically that it just so happens that Madeline's crouching hitbox is also 4 pixels tall, which sort of means that you've got these pixel perfect dashes that you can do in a ton of spots, but in particular this one saves a lot of time. See if I can get it first try. I rushed the dash a little bit there.
Yeah, this is a pixel perfect gap that you can just barely get through with the crouch dash like that. Very nice.
Alrighty, final section of the chapter. The sort of subplot with Oshiro comes to a head, and he turns into a head, I guess. The lightning doesn't do anything, but the dash attack afterwards will kill you if he gets you.
Yeah, so now we have more than just the cycles to worry about, but also the Oshiro cycle as well of his charges. Coming up after this is the last screen of the chapter. Easily one of the most challenging.
That'll work.
Nice.
We're out. Alrighty. head into the next chapter. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the run, Golden Ridge. I personally I have a lot of fun with all these mechanics, and the level feels really fun to play quickly.
So starting off, we've got these clouds. You can kind of jump off and get a little bit of a boost. And these bubbles that kind of refresh your dash and give you a bit of an extended dash themselves. And then finally the wind here, which is pushing against you, but luckily dashing can kind of negate the effects of that wind pushing you back. So
then one thing about bubbles that you're going to see in the next screen here is that if you crouch into them, you can actually, it moves the bubble up a couple of pixels, which allows you to do an upright dash there.
shout outs to Archie.
That's a spike jump. If you're moving away from spikes, like the opposite direction that they face, you can actually just go through them. That's used in a lot of spots for like intentional level design, but it also allows you to like jump out from underneath them on walls. So a thing about this game is that it has a couple ways where it makes inputs lenient. One is a buffer period, and then two is coyote frames like that. So if you get a bunch of coyote distance there, you can actually go straight to that bubble. Saves about half a second. Both of those mechanics actually make it a pretty nice game to run. You can do a lot of setups that involve buffering inputs, and there's naturally windows for that, for tricks that would otherwise be really precise.
Coming up into the final checkpoint, this is the cliff face section. The wind is very strong here. And this screen is where you're going to see more of those coyote frames.
Or not.
Or not. Usually. And the snowballs as well, another mechanic in Chapter 4.
Yeah, they sort of just target your position and come out every few seconds. Not too big of a deal in the speedrun, though. Alrighty.
We have a $1 donation from Archibald that says, I want a real baguette tro. Let's go.
Alrighty.
I know, I'm doing it again.
So headed into Temple, there's an exploit where completing the B side of a chapter will unlock the following A side, and we will use that here because 5B is so much shorter than 5A.
Mostly due to a specific trick in 5B that we'll be seeing that cuts out a good chunk of the start of the level.
That's a really tight cycle. Yeah, so our only goal in 5A right now is just to grab the cassette tape and then get out.
Another pretty cool trick here.
Ah, too low.
Almost.
So you can use the momentum from that dash block and then corner boost out of that room to entirely skip the next one. But it's a pretty precise trick.
Bit of a cycle skip you can make in this cassette room.
Alrighty. Now we're headed into 5B. So about 20 seconds into the level, there's a screen transition where you're meant to go up and get a key, but if you tap jump precisely as you enter the room, you have a 2-frame window to release it and then drop back down. And that allows you to skip about 20 seconds of backtracking.
So coming up in this room,
Too early.
oh, unfortunate.
So there I pressed jump too early, which is before the buffer window to input that.
But because the game is timed on in-game time, you can return to map and just try it again from that checkpoint.
There we go.
And second try can still save a little bit of time. That's a tough trick. Also, one thing about Chapter 5 is now these red bubbles, kind of like the green ones from Ridge, but they will go a much farther distance.
Until they hit a wall or until you dash out of them. That was a brief death. Another one of these spike jumps.
This spike jump being especially tricky because it has to be a neutral jump off of the wall below this, or beneath the spikes.
Is now a good time for a quick donation?
Yes.
Sure.
Now that I'm through that little gap there.
We have a $2 donation from Aaron2U2 that says Poggy.
Foggy. All right. So that coin room right there, you can do a little bit of manipulation of that seeker so that it gets the bottom one. It's pretty tricky with the movement coming in because you don't want to waste too much time setting it up.
And that brings us to the Theo section.
So here we're carrying sort of the second main character in a crystal to the end of this temple. And some weird mechanics about how jumps work is that you face the other way as you like leave the wall. So that's what happened there. I was facing left still. I'm just gonna shut up and try to beat this room.
Yeah, Theo has some interesting mechanics with him. There we go. This room, the gauntlet, all one room, but kind of split into these little 4 mini sections. And the famous impossible room.
Even though the room directly following it is much harder. There we go.
Nice.
Jax, just wanted to let you know you're getting a lot of love in chat for saying Poggy.
Something of a meme on my stream. Alrighty, headed into reflection here. We've got more new mechanics. Right off the bat, we've got feathers. These on analog stick allow you to do 360-degree control, but on keyboard you sort of have to simulate that by tapping the arrows. And then immediately after this, we have a very precise wall bounce.
So right here, trick called Lake Skip. You have to be a couple pixels away from that wall up there,
There we
and
go.
you can just get a wall bounce right off the bottom of underneath those spikes.
Oh my goodness. This room can troll you a little bit. So the route here diverges for some runners. This chapter is technically faster at like world record level to go play the B side, but I'm much more comfortable with this level and faster, so I will continue to play the rest of 6A.
It does not save nearly as much time as 5B.
So one thing about these crush blocks, or Kevin blocks, is that if you do multiple inputs that give you speed, like a jump or a dash, shortly after like leaving the blocks, you can get the boost from them multiple times. So like that ultra I did in the first Kevin block room actually gave me twice the boost that you'd normally get, because I first did a hyper off the block and then did another dash within that, I believe, 10 frame window. I'm not entirely sure if that number is correct, but I will try and do it again here. There, that's another instance of that.
And we'll see a big example of that coming up in the chapter in a little bit.
Oh my. This room is really weird if you get off cycle.
This room letting you kind of go right through that bumper as it's respawning or regenerating, kind of.
Yeah, so those bumpers actually move a little bit, which makes them pretty difficult casually and in speedruns, because you got to get to them at just the exact right time. All bumpers have some idle movement, and then others will move on tracks, like you just saw.
Into the falling section here, we're going to see a little bit of a dev-intended route you can take to kind of go right through the whole thing. And the water section, which Chapter 6 was actually at first supposed to be entirely a water level, and thankfully they did not keep that.
Alrighty, this is that large boost that we mentioned earlier. This one's actually one of the easier ones to execute. There's a good visual cue, and then you just go flying into the next room.
And right into it. So now we have kind of this boss fight here where the other self that was chasing us in Chapter 2 is now kind of the big boss battle, and you need to dash or jump into her to continue through the rooms.
Since the donation incentive was met, of course, this looks a little bit odd, but...
Why are you hitting yourself? I mean, you're hitting yourself anyways, but...
This is probably my favorite part of the speedrun. This section is really fun to optimize and play quickly.
Yes, the movement here is very satisfying.
Can I read a donation quick?
Sure.
We have a $2 donation from TLOU5458 saying 6B, also Pocky.
There we go. Okay, that trick, those two ultras are really tough. That's a really tight strat to skip the feather in that room.
And as you can see, Battlein has a couple attacks that she'll throw at you, these lasers and then those fireballs, most of which don't usually get in the way.
Yeah, there are a couple rooms where you need to sort of plan around those, but for the most part, you just beat her out. Alrighty, now we're into the second part of the fight. She gets, like, I guess, telekinesis powers, and these blocks start moving even more than they were previously.
Coming up on the last room. Getting,
Go ahead.
yeah, getting that feather is very tight, especially with a keyboard. Trying to get to that top feather before exiting the one you're currently in.
Yeah, failing that often results in death, so I'm okay with that result.
Yeah. And now the end of Chapter 6. Madeline and Madeline have sort of made up and combined their powers, and now you get 2 dashes, which is going to play into the next chapter a lot. That's chapter 6.
Read some donations quick.
Sure.
We have a $10 donation from Ya Boy Trash saying do better. TTD donates $2 saying hitting the flatter V is a poggy.
Alrighty, so this level is sort of a rehash of everything you've already seen. Since the last chapter, you get thrown down to the bottom of the mountain, so we're climbing back up again. It's a little hard to see with this variant turned on, but you do have pink hair when you have your second dash, as opposed to, I guess, the purple where we have 1.
Moving into 500 meters, which is going to be based on the first chapter of the game with all the traffic blocks and other mechanics.
Normally I go for an ultra there, that's pretty precise, but falling off the block like that is savable. And right here you want to sort of grab that block to get it out of the way. You can just get right up there.
We have a $5 donation from Oh Dear, Oh No saying 30,000 Pocky, play farewell.
I have a channel point reward on my stream to go play farewell, which will not be happening in this run.
So in this section especially, he's doing something here where he's using those coyote frames out of the dream blocks to do a hyper coming out of them. Not that useful in chapter 2 where you only have 1 dash, but when you have 2 dashes, using that first one to hyper out of the dream blocks is a lot more viable.
This section features a lot of tight cycles and punishing rooms. That's the first of, I guess, 3 long rooms mostly.
Nice. That room is really difficult.
I didn't get the speed I needed on the ultras in the first try. Hopefully the death cycle works out alright.
There you go.
It's probably one of the hardest parts of the run. Also one of the most fun. Feels really good to play that section well.
Going up to this top route here. This is an optional berry room, but it is actually faster than a regular route.
I think I only had 1 dash there. Hard to tell. That's one of the spots where it actually matters.
Using this block here to get a little boost and skip it for the rest of the level, rest of the screen.
Yeah, you can skip the block entirely in that room, but that's 1 second that I choose not to save.
We have a $4 donation from D Devons 96 saying Heart Jacks, Heart Carbon Funds.
Thank you, DD. So a couple demos. That was one, and that's another. Sort of allow you to cut corners in this room. With having 2 dashes, a lot of the optimization in Summit is choosing exactly how to use them, figuring out the best sort of paths to take.
So now we're in the temple, the chapter 5 section of the summit.
You have noticed while listening that the music of this level changes as you get into each new section, which is a really cool touch.
One of the intended deaths in the run, dying after grabbing the key, is just slightly faster to get back to the exit of the screen there.
I actually did a diagonal demo there, so the demo dash earlier that I did in 3A, do that but diagonally. It's a little bit harder to input, but it makes the window for that dash wider.
And now on to the final section. Kind of split into 3 parts, but these flags in general are going to be the final section of the summit. Lots of very long, continuous screens, but each of those flags he's getting is going to be a checkpoint. And this section having the wind from ridge, but instead of a horizontal wind, now it's going to be vertical. And in this section, the wind's pushing down, so it's a downdraft.
This set of flags can be particularly punishing. A quirk about downdraft is that you can just jump off spikes. So if you buffer a jump there, you can kind of just ignore the spikes. And they're there, but they don't do anything as long as you're jumping fast enough.
In the second part, now the wind is pushing you up, kind of making Madeline a little more floaty.
I know some people have called this section like the actual water level. That reflection wasn't.
Some of the flags, as you've probably seen, can be skipped, like that one over there. Not really necessary to go up and grab that.
Yeah. Alright, getting to the top here. The wind is going to die down shortly for the last few flags. Oh, that death's going to send me back really far.
Yeah, flag 2 skip. Saves a little bit, but very punishing if you die.
Oh, okay. I'm not actively trying to miss that flag. It just sort of happens. Alrighty, time is coming up when I reach the top.
And that's time.
What's any percent? Categories like True Ending would continue to fare well, which is DLC that came out recently for this game. But any percent just ends at the top of the summit, and you unlock this sort of pie screen. But the pie looks a little bland for any percent.
Not a lot of strawberries in that pie.
Yeah, that was Celeste any percent. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for doing that run. That was awesome. Celeste is always great to watch. Up next, we have another intense game, Untitled Goose Game, 100%.